17 years ago, I left New York City and all my friends and family and everything I had to go to a restaurant with no name, no reputation, in the middle of Louisville, Kentucky. I'm defined by two places, New York and Kentucky. And I'm defined by two worlds of cuisine, like Southern food and sort of the Korean food that I grew up with. We were a working-class immigrant family. Both my parents worked really long hours, and my grandmother stayed home and cooked. That was my first memories of food. So little by little, I would gravitate towards the kitchen, and I must have been 8 or 9. I told my parents, I said, I'm gonna be a chef. I love this place. It's a very community-driven place. It's not New York. It runs at a slower pace. As someone who wants to cook for a living, I couldn't ask for a better place to be in.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Who's next in line to order? D.
Let me get the breast with greens and sweet potatoes, please.
It's on the wrong day. Why you missed that?
Man, I've been craving it too much. I can't stay out of here.
I had never eaten collard greens or candied yams or fried catfish before I got down here. And when I started eating that food, though it was very foreign to me and I had no history of it and none of my family knew anything about it, there was something about it that just spoke to me. Testing 1, 2, 3. What do you want to hear? Hello, my friend. Hello.
You got on the right shirt.
Can I get some fried chicken?
Yes.
Give me like 3 pieces fried chicken, some greens, and you got beans?
Brown and white beans mix.
Oh, yeah, can I get some of that and a little cabbage?
All right.
Thank you.
You want white or dark meat?
Dark, please, always dark. So the soul food that Big Mama cooks, they're very special foods because they get passed down from generation to generation. And there's not a lot of written recipes that are involved. It's really a sort of family tradition. The fact that those traditions are available to us who, I'm not a part of her family, but that we can go in and sort of partake in this tradition and be able to eat her family recipes, is a very special thing.
Want some pizza today?
I'm watching my waistline. Thank you. When I first came to Louisville 17 years ago, there was not a lot of Southern food restaurants. Southern food wasn't very popular then. And so when I had to learn about Southern food, I had to go to places like this, to soul food, to learn about fried chicken and collards and braised cabbage. And now that Southern food is popular and there's cornbread and fried chicken everywhere, it's important that we don't forget places like this because they were holding the light, they were holding the flame when no one cared about Southern food, when it wasn't trendy, when it wasn't in the food magazines. They were the ones holding the traditions, upkeeping the traditions, and cooking them in a very authentic way throughout decades. Hello?
Yeah, please.
Can I come in and say hi? How you doing?
I know you look different.
Because I lost weight, I look good?
Oh, because you ain't been eating very
Look, that's the world-famous technique right there, huh? I just wanted to say hello. Thank you very much for your food. I know you're an institution here in Louisville. And you make some damn good fried chicken. How long have you been doing this?
15 years.
15 years, yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you're here in Louisville.
I don't know how long it's going to be.
Why? But she's gonna take over.
Who?
Daughter.
She can't go.
No. Did you hear what she said about you?
That's all she do is taco salad. She don't cook.
What do you got over there? Is that the salmon cooking?
You want one?
I'm not gonna say no.
No. Don't smell till I find out what's in it. You slick.
I still want to know how you make your fried chicken. I know. It's the same recipes from the very beginning, or you kind of change them over the years? Same recipes.
You still cooking? Yep. Are you?
I do. Well, this is amazing. Maybe I'll come in here and take over when you're done.
Sure.
Yeah?
You can.
But listen, you know, at some point, like, these things are treasures, you know? Like, I hate to see them get lost once you decide to retire. And they shouldn't be. These are recipes that should go on forever. To me, it's our responsibility collectively to support these places and give them their credit and you know, even gather recipes. And you know, these are like living treasures. And now that Southern food is trendy, there's a risk that places like these and people like this get forgotten. And it's really important that we don't forget them. They're the reason why Southern food is what it is today. My fried chicken doesn't exist without her fried chicken. And it's still not as good as hers. Bourbon is brown water. Of all the liquors in the world, it's probably the most simple, and yet it's the most complex at the same time. The most important part about bourbon actually is not the distillate, but it's actually what happens after you distill this corn whiskey. You put it in a charred barrel. It has to be new oak, has to be from America. The amount of char depends on who you talk to. But you basically, you know, toast the inside of that barrel till it is completely blackened. So now you can imagine taking this really clear, corn-tasting clear liquid and putting it in this darkened, charred barrel, and you close it up and you let time do its thing. You're getting this beautiful sort of marriage of char and oak and tannin and all that mixing with this sweet corn. And over time, you get something which is, to me, the most beautiful elixir in the world. I still think the best bourbon comes out of Kentucky, but you know, there's a lot of people pumping a lot of money into bourbon. Texas and Colorado and California. And they're all trying to make bourbon now.
But it's not an accident that 96% of bourbon is made here.
Yeah.
You know, we have the iron-free water. Mm-hmm. You know, even to this day, the majority of the oak, the white oak that we use for our American white oak barrel is from Kentucky.
Yeah. I taste a lot of bourbons, you know, from distilleries that have been built in the last 5 years. You know what I mean? And while the skill is there's something, you know, and I can't put my finger on it, but there's some, you know, I think something gets passed on from generation to generation where...
Well, it's time.
Yeah.
You know, my grandfather, he was the passionate whiskey maker, mm-hmm. and that truly that's all he was interested in. Mm-hmm. This is a bottle that I bought last week, mm-hmm. and this is from year 2.
That's crazy. So year 2, meaning what year is that then?
That would have been late 1959.
To me, bourbon now has become an ingredient. So it's something that I use a lot in my cooking as well. It adds a lot of complexity to food if you know how to use it right. I'm gonna make you one of my favorite dishes, oysters and grits with bourbon brown butter. It was really a cheap food. It was never considered like a luxury thing. They were so good we overfished them, and so now they're running out, and they've become kind of this luxury product, you know? But in the old days, it really wasn't. So, you know, like everyone knows shrimp and grits. But, you know, back in the day, if when shrimp was not that plentiful, like oysters would have been what you used. Cheers.
Cheers. Good to be with you.
Ah, that's good. So this is basically just a vat of butter that I've browned.
Okay.
There's a little bit of bourbon in there and some salt. That's it.
Okay.
And that's gonna bubble up. And then really all I'm doing is taking these really fresh oysters and just dropping them right in there. And I don't want to cook them too long, just kind of poaching them. So I've got some grits. Just really slowly cook them. A little bit of butter. And all I'm just gonna do is add some moisture. Then I take this bourbon and brown butter, which I've used to poach the oysters, and I use that as a sauce. Just a little squirt of that right over the edge, just to give it a little acidity. What kind of food do you like to eat?
Exactly what you're making. Really?
All right, so I'm really excited for you to try these oysters and grits.
As am I. Oh my goodness. With, you know, the different textures of the oyster and the grits, it all works, doesn't it?
To me, there's something cool about bourbon because you can bring sweetness to a dish. You bring a little bit of smoky flavor. You know, there's always that like sort of leathery hay kind of sort of back note that comes in, and the way I always tell people is like, if you're gonna use bourbon as a ingredient, right, not as just a drink, like they did half the work for you. Bourbon in a pan, you reduce it down a little bit, and really you're just adding a little texture, maybe butter, maybe some oil or something like that, but the flavor's already there. To take something that's been aged 4, 5, 6 years and then actually, you know, use it in an ingredient or sauce. It's kind of the height of luxury if you think about it.
It was the craziest thing. I registered to go to culinary school. That night, I decided, I'm gonna go out with my friends. I was kind of workaholic. Turns out it's like wind down Wednesday at this local place that everyone went to. And I run into another friend who introduces me to Edward.
We started talking and we had some wine and
His pickup line was, "Why the hell are you going to culinary school?"
that was my in. I said, look, you don't have to take classes. I'll teach you everything you need to know. And she took me up on that offer, and that was the beginning of a beautiful marriage. It's the one and only time that I really ever used my culinary education to pick up a girl.
You know, I just thought it was hilarious how, I don't know, aggressive he was. I'm like, oh, you're from New York. Okay, now I get it.
I was born in Brooklyn. I have Korean parents. I got no business in Kentucky. I had a restaurant in New York that was going very well. You know, I had thought I'd made it, right? I was 25 and had a successful restaurant that I opened with myself with no investors in downtown Manhattan. We got New York Times and French Vogue and all these wonderful reviews, and yet I wasn't satisfied. There was something about it that was, to me, I didn't feel like it was my food. I felt something was empty about it. And I realized that I didn't want to stay in New York. I didn't realize I was never going to come back to New York. And I came here. I came to this place, Kentucky, to this very quiet place 17 years ago. There was no gastronomic movement here. I had the freedom and reins to run this tiny restaurant all by myself with no help and no outside influences, and I could just do whatever I wanted. You know, to many, and also to myself at the time, that was a huge failure because I was on top of the world and I had a restaurant in New York City, and all of a sudden I left New York City and all my friends and family and everything I had to go to Louisville, Kentucky.
You know, 610 had such a great, important reputation in its town, a historical reputation. And a lot of people were very skeptical that this New York guy was going to come in and, you know, do it justice. So he really had to work very, very hard to prove himself.
For the first 6 months, I had very few customers. There were nights when I had 4 or 5 people dining at my restaurant. You know, we seat 55, and I remember distinctly a night when I had 4 customers.
I can say firsthand that I witnessed one of the hardest work. Sorry, I choke up.
Really, you know, there were some very awful, depressing nights when she was the only bright thing that you know was in my world, and she would constantly be my best cheerleader and my support, and would tell me that you're gonna do it. And she saw something in me that I didn't necessarily even see in myself.
Okay. I witnessed firsthand someone who had the most crushing work ethic that I've ever seen in my life. His dedication and his intelligence and his creativity all combined together, and then the hours and hours and hours that he put into it.
7 or 8 months into it, we had our first, you know, fully booked Saturday night. And I remember distinctly, you know, opening the paper, and it was all handwritten in pencil. And I just remember looking at all the names down the list and going, wow. I felt like I made it from looking at that piece of paper. I still have that piece of paper, which is funny, right? Because in this day and age, if you're not fully booked on the first weekend, you're already a failure. And it took me 7 months to get a fully booked Saturday night, and most restaurants would have closed by then. I'm so proud of that because I literally worked for every customer that came in the door. And now we have to turn away, you know, people every weekend. So I found, you know, my vision. I found what I want to cook. And I always say that when I found Kentucky, I also found my better half. To me, family is super important. When all this is said and done, you know, you're still gonna have your family. It's why I do all this. You know, it's funny, like, I've always cooked for customers, for adults. But when I had a daughter and we started cooking for her, it just had a different meaning. This person, this being is relying on you for nutrition, and took on a different weight of responsibility. I became very obsessed with reading, you know, ingredients and food packages, and we never ate baby food, or I mean, we just made all the food for Arden ever since she was an infant.
Don't open it.
Don't leave me like this. I always espouse this idea that you can learn from anyone, and you can, you know, experience the world, and you don't have to always learn food from a chef, but, you know, the idea, like, what better way to experience that than learning from a 3-year-old? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Ah!
Come on, let's eat this up.
I think we got more outside than we did inside. Will you sprinkle a little salt on it for me, please? A little bit of salt.
You mean this much?
Yeah. Very nice. Very
And a
nice.
little more.
And a little bit of more salt for me, please. That's it, no more salt. It's gonna get too salty. See that? Simple doesn't mean that it's easy cooking. Simple just means that you're focused. All your training, all your abilities, all your energy is focused on just a core group of ingredients and how we cook them well. Can you crush the popcorn into little pieces for me? It's a very wonderful thing to create a dish that has a few ingredients, but that can have explosive memories. Every single person is born with a palate. You know, my daughter's smelling things, eating things, trying new things, not trying other things, you know, sort of going in and watching her brain work in this very instinctual manner. It's fascinating. and that's just me, but you start to understand that there's a way in which you can cook really deeply, just a few simple ingredients.
Hey, give me. Thank you.